CJ Peterson, and welcome to The Journey is Real. We talk to real people with real passions who share a real portion of the heart. Today, my guest is Lee Chambers. He's going to be sharing the story behind Essential Ease. We've titled the podcast, Finding Authenticity Through Challenge for a Reason. So we'll get to that in just a second. Before we do, I'd like to thank you, Lee, for coming on and joining us.
It's a pleasure, CJ. Great to be on today.
Thank you. Would you mind sharing your backstory before we actually head into where the journey has taken you?
Yeah, so I'm from Preston in the UK, which is north of Manchester. I grew up, I always had food and a roof over my head. My parents worked really hard. I was the first one of my family to go to university, and that's what my parents had always wanted for me. Mm-hmm. I got to university and enjoyed it at first. But when I moved in, I had some struggles around navigating between childhood and adolescence, and then adolescence through to adulthood. But also having the emotional intelligence and self-awareness to find out who I authentically was as a man, because I hadn't had much example from my father. And society pulls you about and expects you to be a certain way, and it's difficult to identify with that. That led me on a spiral of not taking self-care of myself and starting to isolate myself, and eventually led to me isolating myself in my dorm for so long that my parents came and took me home. I then managed to bounce back and start to build my self-awareness. I managed to finish university and then went out into the corporate world wanting to be a financial advisor and help people. But that was in 2007, and after 6 months I lost my training due to the economic crash, and then also my job not long after. So I had to once again bounce back and started a business to allow myself the ownership of my career. And that started going well. And then in 2014, I became unwell and lost the ability to walk over the course of a week, going from fully independent and fully mobile.
What happened?
So I got my immune system got confused and started to attack my joints. So it attacked both my knees, my left shoulder and my right wrist, and left them locked in place.
Wow.
And that was over the course of 5 days. So I was fully independent, fully mobile. My wife was 6 months pregnant. My son was 18 months old. The previous year, we'd got married. We'd bought our first house together. Life was on the surface good.
And pretty much overnight, it just went.
And it just, yeah. So in so many ways, I was there in a hospital bed, not able to do anything for myself, so completely dependent on other people, not able to move, not knowing my long-term prognosis. And as you can imagine, I just turned 29, and I started to think, what do I want to do before I'm 30? And I was banged straight out of that pattern and lay there in a lot of pain with a lot of time to reflect on what the future was going to hold and what I was going to do with myself at that point.
Mm-hmm. So where did you go from there? Because that's probably about as low as you could probably get.
Yeah, so initially, as you can imagine, the shock hit.
Mm-hmm.
Didn't really know what to feel because I've never been here before in this kind of place. And as that shock started to wear off, I then had to kind of alchemize the frustration and the resentment, feeling like I'm 29, I've looked after myself. Why is my immune system attacking me? Why me? I'm
Mm-hmm.
so young. I'm male. My physicality is part of who I identify to be. Mm-hmm. And suddenly I can barely move and can't look after myself. And as I moved through that, I moved into grieving about the fact that I might not walk again, grieving about the fact that this chronic condition, it could by chance blight my whole life and start to define what I can do and the boundaries and the limits that I might put on myself. But I moved up onto a ward with 3 elderly gentlemen, and upon speaking to them, they were kind of saying, you know what, you've told us a bit about your background. Well, you bounced back from your mental health issues. You bounced back from redundancy. This is just another dip on your journey. Like, mm-hmm. We're in our 80s and we've had a journey, and we regret not bouncing back every time and wallowing in our suffering. And you're young, just go and take it and run with it.
Yeah, I mean, bouncing back may be a little bit longer than before, but you take that and you take that determination and it just makes you stronger. Without those setbacks, life would be easy, but it would be super boring.
Yeah, and I
And you
almost
wouldn't
kind of
be as
see.
strong as you are.
So I kind of see it in my head now that life is a bit like an ECG, a heartbeat.
Mhm.
So you've got lots of ups and lots of downs,
Mhm.
and you can always bounce back from the downs. But if it was flat and you had no uncertainty or no challenge, you'd be dead.
Mhm.
So what kind of happened is that hit a certain point in my mind, and it just, in some ways, it just exploded like dynamite in my head. I
Mhm.
suddenly realized that in the 29 years I've been on this planet, I'd never once been grateful for being able to walk. And it just hit me, and it sunk deeper and deeper into my mind. Then I started to expand. Suddenly I've got my 6 month pregnant wife, my family, friends coming to help me wash and eat and do basic things. Have I been grateful for them all these years that they've been here supporting me and encouraging me? Not as much as I should have.
Mhm.
And then that went even deeper. I was born in the first world. I've always had a roof over my head. I've never been hungry. I've had free education, free healthcare, the freedom to start a business, opportunities to work in different industries. I've never truly suffered. I've never been involved in war. I've never had famine or severe earthquake or hurricane ever hit me. I
Mhm.
still managed to live in the place not far from where I was born. Why should I be ungrateful? I could so easily be an orphan in the third world where there's no hospitals, there's no opportunities. They would have no one to look after them. I could have been that person. So that would have been suffering. I need to take ownership of this disease. I have the opportunity to get better. I'm going to take it as a challenge, not as a threat. I'm going to be proactive. I'm going to attack this disease as much as it's attacking my joints. I'm going to take accountability for my recovery. And as I hit that point, I realized I'm going to get discharged and then my daughter's going to be born. By the time she's walking, I'm going to be walking. I'm all in on this decision,
Mhm.
and I've made a decision. I'm going to cut off all other options. And that power of why started to drive me on. So I was discharged. I could barely move. I was in agony. Every morning I had to get up. I had to try and do my stretches and my exercises. I was going to walk in rehab. I was going to intensive physiotherapy. Some mornings I didn't feel like even getting up out of bed. And yet I decided, if I'm going to sit here, lie here, and do what I feel, I'm not going to recover, because I need to get up and decide who I'm going to be, my identity. That identity is someone who runs around the garden with his children, showing them that they can bounce back from challenges that they will have in their lifetime. So by deciding that's the person that I was going to be, my actions were then based off my identity. Because those actions match with my identity, I felt good instead of feeling bad and then not doing the actions and then feeling that subconsciously I wasn't doing what I was saying I was going to be. So on those mornings where I was in more pain, on those days at the hospital where I took less steps than the day before, I knew that I just needed to keep going, to accept the reality of having this disease and realize that I have the choice of how I react to this. And I'm going to be proactive. I'm going to keep pushing forward. I'm going to see the progress and celebrate it a little bit. And when I don't get as far, I'm just going to see it as an experiment that I'm keep trying.
Mhm.
And gradually I start to see more steps, a little bit more distance, a little bit less stiffness. The angles that I could bend my knees were a little bit more. The pain was just a little bit less. And that kind of mindset of, this is experimenting. I did this when I was a child. When I was one, I learned to walk. I can do it again.
Mhm.
And in so many ways that pushed me on. After 6 months, I had another setback. I got back onto my feet, but my walking gait wasn't right. And some of my lower lumbar vertebrae started to crush together. It was a lot of pain. I had to go back into physiotherapy and have them worked to the point where they were loose again, and then go back and relearn to walk properly where I wasn't putting that pressure on. So it took 11 months, and I walked a mile unaided, and I stopped at that lamppost, absolutely beaten, defeated inside, but absolutely celebrating in every way, because I knew if I can do that, then the potential's unknowable. It's beyond. I could possibly bounce back to become more. And then I started to realize I might not have been able to walk as far. I can't run, but I've grown as a man, as a father, as a son, as a husband, just in this process of recovering. And it then became blindingly obvious. Suffering causes growth, and that time to reflect helped me start to connect with my authentic self. There is no masks in suffering. Your vulnerability is shown. You're open. You're almost like a baby again, unable to walk. But the beauty of it when you're a baby is you have no mask. You are pure. You are you. And in so many ways, losing the ability to walk did that for me. It stripped off that backpack of childhood limiting beliefs. It stripped off that backpack of negative talk about myself, of the things that people had told me that I'd taken and attached them to my identity and struggled to shake them off over the years. And in so many ways, I now realise that for me, I don't see it as a bad thing. It was a challenge, and yet it's made me the person that I am and helped me connect to my path, which now means that I actually live a fulfilled life, even though I'm still physically limited in what I can do.
It's kind of like when the caterpillar is moving around, he's fine, he's good, he's doing his life, but he goes into that cocoon, which is kind of like when your body decided to rebel against you and you had to fight to get out of that cocoon every single day. You could have stayed in that darkness of the cocoon and the safety of the cocoon and the warmth of the cocoon, but you're like, no, this isn't what I want for my life. And you busted out and you flew. Since then, you've made a lot of changes physically, emotionally, mentally. I mean, all through the gamut. And so I'm very proud of you. Congratulations. That's huge. Now, what have you done with your story?
So now my story has become a defining part of the work that I do, and also the defining guiding star of my actions and my moral compass in life.
Mm-hmm.
So today I now work as a coach and a well-being consultant within business and for individuals. And I really help people connect with themselves authentically. In so many ways, I get them to a point where I empower them and encourage them to dig deeper, to use the self-awareness. Everyone has those answers inside of them, and yet we hold our masks so tightly. Sometimes we just need the permission to start to drop them a bit. Some powerful questions that start to almost melt the glue.
Mm-hmm.
And someone who listens and encourages you to gradually slip it off and be the authentic you. And I do that through powerful questioning, actively listening, using my intuition to understand when people are taking society's candy and eating that rather than looking inside themselves and bringing themselves forward to the world. And then I help them to optimize their energy, look at how they sleep, the nutrition, and how much they move, and actually treat it as an experiment, because we're all different. And
Mm-hmm.
taking someone else's meal plan or someone else's sleep schedule, it's not designed for you. You have to go in there and find exactly what works for you by experimenting, by putting a lab coat on, just like you were back doing science at school. And I've done that with my own nutrition, sleep, and movement. And I'll take my last dose of medication next week, and then I'll be controlling my disease just by my own lifestyle, by finding exactly what works for me. And that, again, is a big part of the journey. I didn't want to just stop and say, that's it, I can walk. I wanted to keep getting better. I didn't want to be on the medication.
Mm-hmm.
I want to push those boundaries. I won't be limited. I'm not defined by my disease. It's part of me that I take with me every day. it now empowers me to help other people who are also suffering from chronic illness, but also to empower people who don't, and make them realize they can, if I can do this from that position, then they can start at a higher position and propel themselves even further. It's all inside of them. You just need to align with that to get more energy by living mindfully, and start to look at those beliefs, start to unpick them, start to pull them apart, start to look at the little habits that no longer serve them. And I do this with individuals, and then I go into companies doing a similar thing. But with companies, it's just a bit more about, are your leaders conscious? Do they care about the employees? Is this a place where people feel they can grow? Can they become the leaders that they are? Because everyone is a leader, and the best leaders help other people to become leaders. And I bring that through. And then that connection to employees being so important. Our physical and mental health is our biggest asset. The biggest asset in your company are your employees and your physical and mental health. And every company is a vehicle to change the world, to do something different. Have you got your values? Are those values true? Do you live them? Do your company's actions align with that? Are the way you treat your customers, your clients, the people you collaborate with, your investors, align with those values? And if they are, people can thrive because everything is pointing in the same direction. And then people actually feel well. They start to take responsibility for their own health. They feel empowered to make choices that help them thrive, that serve them better. And the environment and the culture helps them to become the people that they want to be, rather than having to put a mask on to hold the shield up just to survive every day.
Well, and in this society, between social media and internet, everyone's got these masks on. And everyone's seeing what everybody else is doing, so therefore they have to feel like, they have to keep up with everybody, not just with the Joneses, but with everybody. And so they're running around at like top speed, collecting things left and right. And it sounds like it, correct me if I'm wrong, but you kind of go in there and you blast that out, and you're like, okay, kind of like look at it and go, okay, have you touched this in the last 6 months? Is this helping you at all? How will this help you? If it doesn't help you, get rid of it. And you kind of go in there and you kind of simplify everything. And once everything is down to the bare bones, you come in and go, okay, now let's look at this in a healthy way, so I can not only fix you or help you and guide you in healthy habits, but healthy lifestyle, healthy food, healthy, the healthier you are, the faster you're going to fly and the further you're going to fly, keeping with that butterfly example. And you kind of help them all figure out how to get out of that cocoon. You can't, just like a butterfly, you can't go in there and rip that cocoon off for them, otherwise it's going to hurt them. You go in there and you kind of go, okay, push there. That looks a little bit thinner. Try there. You can break through right there. Come on, keep going. And you kind of, push them to the point that they come out of the cocoon on their own and they fly on their own. And I think that's amazing.
Yeah, and that's the principle of essentialize. It's to get rid of the trivial many and start to focus on the vital few. And in so many ways, social media is prevalent. And like you say, it causes so many people to put masks up. What I've actually found is even bigger problem is that people look back on their social media past 3-4 years ago, and they only see the curated snapshots of their life then. So they see themselves on the beach. They don't see the argument they had 30 minutes before. They completely forgot that. So in some ways, it's incredibly dangerous when we compare ourselves to others, because we have that bias. We don't want to get thrown out of the tribe because we can't hunt on our own. But even worse is when it confirms that we believe our lives used to be great, because we forget the bad bits and only see the good bits on social media. And we then become depressed because our life isn't how it appeared 4 or 5 years ago. But in reality, your life isn't any different. You just end up cutting the bad bits out and showing the world what you want them to see. You're poisoned by your own mask.
Exactly. And, in this world, we have to be true to ourselves. We're not the same people we were 3, 4, even a year ago. We've all changed, especially, in what's going on around the world right now. But we've all changed. We all evolve. It's kind of like that fine wine. When you put it in, yeah, it's pretty good. But when you let it sit there and age, it just gets better and better and better. And we look back and go, oh, I remember stepping on those grapes. Oh, I remember what that was like. Maybe I need to do that again. We need to go back. And it's like, no, you need to go forward. The only reason you're supposed to look back is kind of like a rear view mirror. You got the big windshield in front of you. That's what you need to focus on. Just kind of glance back at the rear view mirror once in a while to see how far you've come.
Yeah.
Not to go back there, but just to kind of, oh yeah, I made it through that. When we aren't transparent, when we're not honest with ourselves, when we're not sharing the good, the bad, and the ugly, it's a disservice to, not only people that are following you, but also to yourself. Because like you said, you only see the good stuff. You miss all the rough stuff. I have a blog called The Journey to Fruitfulness. It's where we take our 5 acres and we're taking it from ground zero to a fully functioning, self-sustaining farm. I'm not just sharing the successes. We just lost 11 beehives. We have an apiary. And I shared the whole story through that. I've shared when we've been able to pull honey. I've shared when we made mistakes. I share when we made epic failures. And it's like, kind of do what Einstein says, failure is only a step to moving forward and doing it more intelligently and
Yeah.
succeeding more intelligently. And that's kind of how I run my life. It's like, yep, I screwed up. I'll own it and I'll go forward.
Yeah, and that ownership is massive, and the ability to just look back on those mistakes and those failures and actually just pick them apart, detach the emotion. It's not you who failed, it's that failed.
Mm-hmm.
Pick it apart. There's lessons in there that you probably will learn that didn't work, and that's why. There's a little bit in there that actually I could take this to use in the future, and there's always a tiny little bit of treasure in every failure.
Mm-hmm.
I like to say that every oyster, they don't create pearls unless a parasite gets inside, attacks it, irritates it, to the point where they then make a tiny piece of treasure. And that's our lives. Every failure is that oyster that's been irritated, that's been challenged, that's been attacked. And every failure has a tiny piece of treasure for you to take and cherish. And at the end of your life, you want a pearl necklace of failures that you've picked that bit of treasure from. And you'll be on your deathbed without the regrets of what you didn't do, without the regrets of being authentically true to yourself, without the regrets of speaking to the people and connecting with people you wish you'd have stayed in contact with.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and in our lives, like they say, diamonds are lumps of coal who have handled pressure exceptionally well.
Yeah.
We want to have those diamonds. We want to have those pearls. We want to have those things in life, but you got to remember what that looked like. What did that look like when that lump of coal was under pressure before it came the diamond? People try to focus on just the diamond, and they missed the entire part before it. They missed people who have helped them along the way, or they just kind of fade off into the distance. And it's like, life is full of ups and downs. It's full of successes and failures. It's full of true joys and epic failures and extreme downs and extreme highs. And that's what makes life exciting. That's what makes life fun. That's what makes life worth living. If if we were flatlined, we're not going to get very far.
No.
It's those ups and downs, and we were talking about earlier in an EKG, that show you that you're still alive.
Yeah, and that's being human. You've got to experience the full range of human emotion, from absolute desperation and pity all the way to elation and joy. And we have to almost go through that suffering process and accept those negative emotions at first, because if we try to bottle them away, they will come back and bite you down the line. Because life is a process, and we must accept and commit to feeling a whole range of emotions, because that is the essence of being human. But in so many ways, it's just committing to that little bit of ownership over these situations, because you can't control the wider external atmosphere. And yet, in between that stimulus and response, you have the control of how you react and how you take that forward. And our future is made from the thousands of decisions that we will take in the future. And our past and where we are today, all those decisions in your past have made you the person that you are today. And that's why we don't visit the past unless we're looking for that data to use in the future.
You know, when people say, if I knew then what I knew now, what I would change, and my answer is always, no, I wouldn't, because that's who made me who I am. You have a website, Essentialese. Can you explain to people what is on there?
Yeah, so it tells people more about my own little journey.
Mm-hmm.
Also explains about the number of services that I offer. And there's also an ebook for any listeners which poses a number of questions to help you try and connect to your authentic self. This is not the typical ebook, 5 ways to find your purpose, because you can't think your way to clarity on your purpose.
Mm-hmm.
You find your purpose by going out there, doing things and finding what resonates with you, and some reflection on the things that you've done in the past. Start to unpick them and see where the underlying themes of what you enjoyed in your previous experiences are. Combine them together, but you need to appreciate and use the book. It's a workbook. It's got questions, powerful questions that you can ask yourself. Not all those questions will resonate with you. That's why there's a good range of questions in there, because we're all personal, bio-individual people. And yet, education doesn't teach us to ask powerful questions. It teaches us to find answers, put them on a sheet of paper, and then pass through to the next stage of life. But if you want to try and really find that compass to help you move in the direction that you want to, it's really important that we learn to become more self-aware and ask ourselves those questions. It's those questions that help us have the power in our hands to take the mask off our faces.
Gotcha. Now, where can they find, what is your website address? People can find you.
So it's essentialise.co.uk. And
can you spell that out for people who are listening?
Yeah,
please?
It's essentialise.co.uk.
Okay, that's essentialise.co.uk. Well, thank you so much for coming on today, Lee. We've literally got about 2 minutes left. Is there anything you'd like to add?
I'd just like to say, for anyone who's having a challenging time at the moment, and the whole world is having a challenging time, and yet in these times, we all need that down to appreciate and be grateful for the amazing world out there. And also, as a crisis, it actually makes us as humans become more innovative, more creative, more compassionate. Now is the time to have those deep conversations and connections with other people to make sure that they're doing okay. But also, with many people being less busy, now is a perfect time to reflect and start to pick apart your past so you can build your future with awareness, with authenticity, because the journey is real.
Thank you. Very nicely put. Well, thank you so much, Lee, for coming on. We really appreciate you. We really appreciate, you sharing your heart and your story, and look forward to checking out Essentialise. That's www.essentialise.co.uk. So we do thank you for coming on today. And thank you guys for joining us for The Journey is Real, where we talk to real people with real passions who share a real portion of their hearts. I'm CJ Peterson with cjpetersonwrites.com. Until next time.